And you can also help let people in if you
All
notice
right.
that.
Wait. Yes.
All right, and here we go. And everybody, please be muted until it's your turn to talk.
Well, it's been almost exactly 2 years, and finally, the pandemic is dissipating. We made our choices, we learned our lessons, and it's a new dawn. And it's a new season for the year 2022, and a new time for all of us to embrace new life, new opportunities, new abundance. And while we balance our care and genuine prayer for peace and the awareness of a world that still includes unthinkable tragedy and sorrow and even war, we also are grateful for how blessed we are. And so let us use this spring of 2022 to take everything that we've learned, clear the past, and move forward in gratitude for the freedom that we have, for the blessings of our lives, for the opportunity to come together again in community, online, and yes, in person. We are all part of the awakening world, and we all have the roles that we're playing as individuals and collectively. We are the imaginal cells finding each other to create a beautiful, incredible butterfly out of the old paradigm. So welcome to spring of 2022. Welcome to the awakening world.
We come from the same source, a powerful love force. We're coming together, stronger than ever, not divided. We come from the same source, a powerful love force. We're coming together, hear the call, you are invited. We come from the same source, a powerful love force.
Hey, welcome everybody. I'm Love Coach Scott Catamas, and it is another weekend of the awakening world. And I want to welcome everybody that's in our Zoom room. I see a lot of our regular friends and some new people too. Let us know where you are geographically. And we're going to make this a very interactive show. We've got some great guests, so we want to hear thoughts, comments, questions on the topic of quantum consciousness, science, spirituality, and all those good things. I also want to welcome those of you who are watching on all of our Facebook groups, pages, and channels. Thank you to John and Summer Raymer from the Sign Network. They're the ones who make sure that we got sometimes as many as 150 different Facebook groups and pages, which is very cool. Also want to thank our friends at Unify, and I will be watching what's going on in the Unify chat box. And also, the easiest way for you guys to, if you're watching on Facebook or on Alan's YouTube channel, and Alan, we do appreciate very much that you carry all of our shows on your YouTube channel. But come on into the Zoom room. It's easier to interact directly with all of our guests. And it's easy to do that. Just go to globalpeacetribe.com, globalpeacetribe.com, and register. Boom. You'll not only get the link for tonight, you'll get the link for all of our shows for the next 3 months. And we've got amazing shows planned. So come on in and join us. All right, we are going to get going with tonight's show. And I just want to start by acknowledging that we've got people from all over the world already watching us. We've got Dorina in Ecuador, and Lynn in Leaf, California, Oregon, Vancouver, British Columbia, Los Angeles, my hometown, Ontario, Canada. And then looking at our friends in Unify, we've got people from Holland and Venezuela, Europe, and of course all over the United States and Canada. So welcome. It's truly an international show. And speaking of international, here's that international man of mystery, Alan Steinfeld, one of my oldest friends. We have been working together on various things since 1989. 1989, we met in Maui. And Alan, you've done it again. You've brought in some really great guests. Tell us about the show and what we're going to see tonight.
Well, first of all, I'm very excited to host another whole weekend with you, Scott. This is Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, and we're diving into this understanding of what does quantum mean? What is quantum science? What is quantum thought? How does quantum transformation work in people's lives? And quantum theory is a whole different understanding than the old classical theory of Newtonian physics that said there's a cause and reaction. There's something else going on when we talk about the quantum understanding of reality. There is no cause, there is no effect, there is just isness in a sense. And we'll get more into that because tonight's show is really about the science of a new understanding of quantum thinking. And that's why I invited my good friend Zenka to be here with some of the great thinkers who are originating new ways to look at reality. I always love to look at science as dictating the ways we think about reality. And what we have here tonight are new avenues of thought. That's what my whole show, New Realities, has been about. That's what my book, Making Contact, is about, making contact with the deeper levels of ourselves. So I invited Zenka because I've known Zenka from Sedona, and she is full of energy, excitement, intelligence, and creativity. And I knew she'd have some good people to bring on. So
We love Zenka. Zenka has just got the best energy of all. Hey, Zenka.
You should see her at a spoon bending. This is she is at her peak performance. She said, "This is it. The mind is bending the spoon," and it really does work.
It does. It
really does. So Zenka's on fire, and she's gonna do even more. So welcome, Zenka, Caro, to the show, and tell us about who we have here tonight.
Yeah, thank you so much. It's fun creating that peak emotion at the spin bending parties, and hopefully we'll have some peak emotion tonight, because what we're going to be talking about is really the frontier of consciousness. It's the frontier of science. It's the merging of spirituality and science that we've always been waiting for, and it's causing a total problem within the scientific community because they're starting to realize that consciousness is somehow driving reality, right? It's fundamental. It's more fundamental than matter. So it's with a great pleasure that, the whole idea of this show kicked off because Isaac was on one of our calls, and this is his coming out party with his book, because his book was just published last week. It's called Unity Theory. And it's really a new look at physics. He's a theoretical physicist, and he throws out matter, he throws out time, he throws out gravity, and he unifies things in a theories that even a child could understand. And he talks about really interesting ideas about how the universe is how it works, and what dark matter is, and what dark energy is. Quantum physics is kind of the beginning of something totally new. And so if you're a scientist that have studied, 50,000 years and read all the books, you're kind of at a level playing field in the world, because we really are just at the beginning phases. They said, if you know what quantum physics is, you don't know what you're talking about. But I think we're 5 years away from that quote. The other major hero we have on the call tonight is Adaam Curry, and many of you know his work. He's such an inspiration to our community and the scientific community. At a very young age, he was adopted by the scientist at the Pear Research Lab in Princeton. So one of the few unusual academic labs in the world. And he, started to study with the scientists and look at mind-matter interactions and look at random number generators and really start to unravel some of the phenomenon and questions that we still have. He went on to work with the scientists at the Institute for Noetic Science, And now he's working on saving the world, doing very interesting work with sustainability in our environment. So we hope to woo him back into fully some of his work with entanglements and how these mysteries are starting to be understood.
Right. I just want to say one thing, Zenka, which really separates quantum physics from Newtonian is that the observer affects reality. Consciousness is entwined with the world around us. There is no objective truth or reality, as I see it, like Newton and his ideas about physics. So it changes everything. If consciousness can affect the world, what are we capable of? What can we do with this thing? And you, Zinc, have done some beautiful experiment. Can you just talk about your experiment with the rice, dreaming of the rice?
Alan,
Oh, yeah.
slow down
Okay.
for 1 second.
Oh, right, right.
Because
Okay.
we still have a very important introduction to make.
Okay, okay. Yeah.
How can we continue until we bring on Trish Wright, the star of the show, for heaven's sakes?
I'm not the star. I just show up and co-host and bring some random personality.
Glad you're here. Thank you, Trish.
Yeah.
Thank you. I'm excited to learn tonight.
Okay. Yes.
Yeah, and we are. It is going to be one of those nights for learning. Also, we will probably hear a little bit later on. Dr. and Mrs. Future are in the house. So, in fact, I'm going to put the spotlight on them briefly. There they are. There is Dr. Future with Mrs. Future looking over his shoulder, as she so often does. So, Dr. Future, good to have you with us. And we'll look forward to hearing what you have to say a little bit later on in the show. All right, Alan, I'm putting the spotlight back on you to go back to your question.
Well, also, I know you had an opening question too, and I kind of got very excited
You got
about all the
excited. You got excited.
I got excited.
Well, you know what? Because all weekend long we're exploring this topic. So yeah, I would love to ask actually all of our guests just to give us an introduction to what is quantum consciousness. What is that? And then what's your kind of your take on it, or maybe your relationship to it? And Zenka, do you want to answer that first?
Sure. Like I said, scientists are starting to believe that our consciousness is actually creating what we're experiencing. And we're starting to realize that too, because these ideas are starting to enter our minds and we're realizing like, wow, why did I manifest that? I did not want to do that. Or, wow, I just did that, right? Or depending on how you look at a situation is how many times you have to go through that lesson again and again and again, right? So there's this idea that that we're living in some sort of a mirror, right? That's very attuned to our minds and our experience. It's kind of like so now the question of the day is, how do you attune your body? How do you attune your mind? How do you tune your heart to, really step in right now in the earth right now and create something new and create something beautiful and create something amazing that we've never been able to do before. So when we talk about quantum consciousness, we're talking about the placebo effect. Medicines, there's only 1% difference between real medicine and fake medicine. That's belief. That's it. So if you want to look at what you want, look at your life and see what you have. Because at some level, if you haven't, you know what I mean? So yeah, and we can talk a little bit more about some of the science, like you were saying about my experiments of how far can I take this? Like, can I time travel? Can I bend a spoon? Like, and if we can do that just by believing we can, what can we do together right now in the world? That's.
I'm going to bring on Adaam and Isaac to hear what they have to say. There is Adaam, and then after we hear from Adaam, we'll hear from Isaac.
If you were a mainstream quantum mechanics scientist a couple of decades ago, the term quantum consciousness was something that made your blood boil. And in the present day, if you're a mainstream physicist, the term quantum consciousness is merely something that makes your blood simmer. The reason is that as we've spent the past few decades attempting to locate the source of our awareness, that is to say our consciousness, through greater and greater sophisticated tools, fMRI and so forth, looking into the brain, we've realized that not only have we not found it, but we don't even know how to define it. Consciousness is a mystery in terms of why it should be attendant to brain functioning at all. In fact, where do you even draw the line ontologically from where it exists? And so this has created a kind of revolution in our thinking about the nature of consciousness, and that has begun its slow penetration into the world of fundamental physics, including quantum mechanics. Now, the founders of quantum theory have long thought the fathers always had a place for consciousness. There are certain paradoxes, the measurement problem, for example, in quantum mechanics, which there's an interpretation that leaves open a space for the role of our mind or our consciousness as establishing physical reality, as Alan pointed out. I think that's a perspective that's gaining traction. But outside of this, the narrow domain of quantum mechanics, in the sciences in general, the material sciences, you're finding an acceptance of the notion that consciousness is an intrinsic aspect of physical reality. It's not an emergent property of matter, but it is perhaps the most fundamental thing that there is. And if consciousness is the most fundamental thing that there is, then how do we understand quantum particles, which we previously thought was the most fundamental thing that there is? Nobody is denying the existence of either of them, but we're trying to find out the relationship between those two things. Now, so from a material science point of view, quantum consciousness is understanding the physical world around us as not necessarily being the driver of the show, but our own consciousness being the driver of the show. And that opens up some magical new possibilities, not just in terms of how we understand our world and develop a framework for the next century, but to explain some of the more interesting aspects of our own lives. We've all experienced synchronicity and psychic phenomena and, panoply of various interesting subjective experiences. And maybe these things are not just experiences happening as biochemical reactions in our brain, but actually something that ripples out beyond us. Indeed, that can affect sort of the world around us, not just immediately around us, but forwards and backwards in time. Just the very nature of our own reality. It's very exciting. So quantum consciousness to me is part a term that's getting at a general movement in the academic world, and it's part a metaphor for our own expansion of the notion of who we are and our own capabilities.
Thank you, Adam. Beautiful. Thank you. So, that does kind of fit in with what this polarity we have between how can there be an objective world and a subjective world? We need a unified theory, and this is what our next speaker, Isaac Mars, has put together in his own way. Anything you want to say, Scott?
No, let's hear from Isaac.
Great.
All right. So first off, I just want to say thank you, everyone, for coming here and showing up and being you. I really appreciate this opportunity to share my downloads with the collective. So for me, my entire theory, which is unity theory, is actually the short title. The longer title is the Universal Natural Intelligence Theory of Energetics. So my entire theory is basically based on quantum consciousness. And to me, a lot of people have taken the word quantum and tended to use it in a way that isn't necessarily as straightforward as the word is in our language, in our English language. And what quantum really means is just things at like the smallest level, the lowest level that we can possibly go in this reality. And so for me, what quantum consciousness means is the fact that consciousness is, like Adam said, basically the entire basis of reality. And one philosophical thing I like to share on that is that everything must be consciousness, because if there was no consciousness of an event in our reality, then we could argue that that event never happened because there was nothing there to experience it. And so for me, it's a very interesting thing to talk about, because in my book, I explain that for however long this topic of consciousness and the observer effect and quantum entanglement, for however long we've been talking about that, we've been looking at it sort of backwards. In my book, I explained that if we view things a certain way, which I can go into later in the show, if we view things a certain way, we realize that the observer effect and quantum entanglement, through the use of an idea called superdeterminism, or just strictly speaking determinism or predeterminism, we can learn that in a singular timeline, these things are actually showing us consciousness at the quantum level. And so we've just been misinterpreting the results the entire time. But the thing is, it's already here. The universe is essentially winking at us through these goofy interactions in which the observer observes the experiment with the photons going through the plates, and then it changes the second that we observe it, implying a minimal level of awareness. So that right there is basically, to me, at least arguable proof that consciousness exists at that quantum level, that smallest level possible. And if it does exist there, then it must logically exist within everything else. So it's a really exciting time for us to be alive, because as Nikola Tesla said, the day that science begins to study non-physical phenomena, it'll make more progress in 1 decade than we have in the entirety of our existence here on Earth. So it's going to be a really exciting time.
That is cool. All right, so I'm going to bring everybody on, and I do have another question. Kind of simplifying, because obviously all of you have a very scientific and incredibly intelligent background. But would it be too simplistic to say that this is a dream world, and that it's a dream within a dream within a dream within a dream, which is honestly how I've kind of experienced it when I've had my out-of-body experiences.
Zenka had something to say, because we almost had a guest on who Zenka knows pretty well, who said this is all a simulation. Zenka, you want to talk about, give an answer to Scott's question?
Yeah, I mean, I know that, Isaac doesn't like the word simulation because it's right. It feels unnatural, it feels scary, it feels foreign, it feels like it's much more beautiful to say, oh, this is some sort of a dream. So it doesn't really matter how you frame it. I tend to like the idea of a simulation because I think that that's what's happening. I'm not entirely sure that I'm not like lying down in a bed right now, and this is the dream state. So again, we're reaching the elephant in the room, which is really asking us, how do we create that dance between us and the universe all together, right? Because I have a feeling that, I mean, and this is, Isaac and I have been talking a lot about how time works and how things work. He believes that everything is already predetermined, right? So everything's already happened, right? So what does that mean? Have we stepped backwards into an experience and now we're running it? Or, and then he says, but there's free will when we can actually move our vibration up, we can experience something else. So again, I definitely understand that my actions are creating my entire reality. So I mean, we definitely are in some sort of a dream. That seems to be clear to me at this point.
I added Isaac to the spotlight. So Isaac, any thoughts in response to this question or what Zenka just said?
Absolutely. Yeah. So first of all, I love you, Zenka. Thank you for being you. And I just want to say, it's not that I don't like the idea of a simulation, it's just that that description doesn't necessarily resonate with me because of the connotation behind it. Because like she said, a lot of people can get like spooked thinking of life that way. But to answer your question, Scott, we could call it a dream. We could call it heaven. We could call it hell. We can call it whatever we want, because really what it is our perspective of the experience. When it comes down to understanding what consciousness is and what the source of it is, we can't even touch that with words. We can't touch that with concepts. Existence is merely, it's just vibration. So when we understand that, if we drop a rock and the rock makes sound, that's consciousness. It might be a minimal form of consciousness, but it's consciousness nonetheless. And so in regard to what she said about time, the only way that time could work the way that it does, in which we have this sort of illusion of a linear story from left to right, start to end, that can only happen if, like, on train tracks, all the tracks are already laid for the train to reach its destination. It's the same thing for us. And what we've learned, actually, I digress. The reason that I think that is because of this thought experiment that actually spurred all of my theories. This was the beginning of everything for me. And it was this idea that we have the observer, so a person standing, and they represent the present moment. And this observer is looking into their past in a mirror. So this mirror represents the past. It makes sense logically and philosophically, because you can look into the past, but you can't reach in and change it at this current human level. And so I thought, if existence is symmetrical, as if we're on a timeline, then the future must be just as symmetrical as the past is. So with that observer in the center representing the present moment, and then the past in front of them in which they could see or reflect on, then we have another mirror behind the present moment. And then we realize that present moment is infinitely reflected in the past mirror and in the future mirror. And what this brought about in me was this intuitive knowing that it is our consciousness that is moving through these infinitely existing versions of us to have this experience that we've created for ourselves. And when we know that, it makes sense, because allegedly the universe is infinitely expanding. Well, if it's infinite, and we're a piece of something that's infinite, which makes sense because we are energy, and if I'm energy and everything else is energy, well, I'm everything, then that means we must have infinite aspects about us. And so what we've done, basically, taking the sort of Hindu or metaphysical belief that we are all God or the universe experiencing itself, then I've played this trick on myself where I'm so crafty that I've created this idea that I'm limited being in this physical body. But the thing is, it's just an idea. And so that's what we learn through NDEs, near-death experiences, and people that have out-of-body experiences just from meditation, is that we exist beyond this physical body. Mm-hmm. And so, yeah, this is going to be a pretty big deal as these ideas start to hit the collective consciousness.
Well, Trisha, did you have something to say?
Yeah, I'm loving this. I'm listening from a slightly different approach, because I'm deep in decolonization work right now. And one of the things that my teacher Bridge said, and some of her teachers, was that the human constructs of limitation, or the things that we've created to make it easier to, let's say, communicate, like pass me the glass, is that it's created these ideas that have separated us from God, that has separated us from the natural spark of life, which is very limiting. Like how I see God or creativity or creation is the spark of life. And so as I'm hearing you speak, I'm like, oh, I love this, because it really brings back the ethereal or etheric presence of humanness And I also don't like the simulation word either, because I was like, oh, that's so dehumanizing. I'm in this body, like this is all good. Like even though I have, like this idea that I'm limited to this piece right here. But I know that I'm connected to you, and I know that my cellular makeup is actually connecting to your brain matter right now. Like I know that I can, whatever I'm interacting with is absolutely touching and making ripples through this specific
creation.
whatever that would be. Like, I mean, I was going to say reality, but I don't know if I believe that.
When I hear the word simulation in terms of what we're talking about, I'm picturing that the Big Bang is when somebody hit the enter key on their computer.
Right.
And that's when that's when the Big Bang happened.
And
I wanted to
Scott,
bring-
per my theories, the Big Bang is still happening right now because all of time happens at once through simultaneity. So not only is the Big Bang still happening, but from a philosophical perspective, we are the Big Bang still coming on to reality. So
Well, I want to bring Adam into this discussion because I think you've worked with practical applications of quantum theory and consciousness and saw real-time experiments, and maybe Isaac and Zenka has too. But I'm curious about your perspective about, because Isaac sort of brought up the idea of free will and destiny and totality of consciousness. Where do you stand as far as the simulation, the creation itself, and our interface with this thing that Trish described as all this?
I'm sympathetic.
AKA whatever my brain can rationally conceive based on the things that people told me that I could rationally conceive. Just saying.
I'm no stranger to flailing my hands to make a point. I do it all the time.
Oh, good. We're friends then.
So what do you think, Adam? How do you kind of bridge those worlds?
Well, I dropped out of the academic world, which has allowed me to do all kinds of playful experiments and mad science projects without a nosy PI looking over my shoulder. And one of them actually pertained to what Isaac was discussing about the notion that there's only the present moment. If you think about it, we've never seen the past before. We've seen effects of what we remember the past to be. We've never directly perceived the past, nor have we ever perceived the present. Or the future, we've only ever perceived the present moment. So you could say, okay, well, in 5 minutes, it's very likely that every single person on this Zoom is going to be still on this Zoom in the future. That's not a 100% probability. It's a slightly less than 100% probability because the internet connection might be disrupted. There might be an asteroid or something that lands. Low probability. So the likelihood is that we're going to be here. So we see the future as a probability function of the present. And the further we go in time, the further that probability function declines for any given potential reality. Now, we think of the past as set in stone, meaning it's already happened, and so the probability of something in the past is 100, or p equals 1. What I would suggest is that's just a bias. That's a bias that we have. The past, from one point of view, is no different than the future. We can't see it. We can only see its effects, and so it may be that the past is, like the future, a probability function of the present moment. And you end up being able to resolve a lot of peculiar anomalies. One of which is a concept called retrocausation, which is something that the past causes something in the future. And that sounds a bit science fiction, but actually the AAAS, a preeminent scientific academy, has periodic conferences on the notion of retrocausality. And there's been a number of mainstream demonstrations even of retrocausality, which really plays with our concept of time and causality. Getting back to the experiments, I've done a number of these, but at the Paralab we used a device called a random event generator, which is kind of like a coin flipper, and it would flip purely random sets of heads and tails so that you'd get a 50-50 distribution. And then you'd have somebody intend to affect the outcome of the random event generator. They would shift it to more ones or more zeros. And it was a very elegant experiment that showed the influence of human consciousness on physical reality. But we also did these experiments forward and backward in time. For example, we would run the random number generator, collect the data, but not look at it. That is to say, not observe it. And then we'd wait a few weeks and have somebody attempt to influence the outcome. So back in the past, to be more heads or more tails. And then we'd look at the data, and sure enough, there was a statistical effect there. A similar thing, we would have somebody in the present attempt to influence the future in 2 weeks, say, and then in 2 weeks, we'd run an experiment where we generate data and then look at it, and it corresponded to their intention. So there's something about consciousness that seems to be a level above the normal time domain here. Now, you could say that the whole time travel component that I'm discussing is a bit of a red herring, because the experimenters, us in this case, never looked at the data in the past or the future. We only looked at it in the present moment. In fact, the data has never been observed. All data has only been observed in the present moment, right? And we carry with it the various knowledge of X person did Y, I did this experiment that way. And this tends to sort of come through in the present. So the one thing that we can show for sure is that there are definitely time-based anomalies, particularly when it comes to consciousness. The one thing that we are still is very slippery and we have a hard time grappling with is this notion that things only happen in the present moment. What you do about it is challenging, to be sure.
Is it possible to use a technology of consciousness to time travel back and forth? I mean, to actually move to a future and then move to the past? Is there practical applications for this?
I have no idea how that could be possible, but intuitively, I think that it can be. I suspect that reality, a bit like you guys were describing, Isaac and Scott, is sort of like these nested dolls of reality, these levels. And mastering one means moving back and forth or moving freely in one, but you're still in a higher reality with its own new set of principles. Now, it could be that you could find some sort of way to overcome what we think of as laws, but are really like these tendencies in this dimension, one of which might be time travel. You'd be soundly in some other dimension, for sure, with its own properties. But from the point of view of this one that we mostly call home, some of us, time travel may be possible.
Maybe we're at the beginning stages of learning the practical applications of consciousness as it interfaces with time. I mean, Zenka, you've actually done experiments. Do you want to talk about your experiments and also your spoon bending? You lead the spoon bending course, and you know it's possible. You're already projecting a future possibility for people to kind of flow into. So,
well, really quick, I just wanted to let you guys know that I do have some ideas about what Adaam was just talking about. So before we go to Zenka or after we go to Zenka, it's up to you, Adaam.
Do it after Zenka because
I
want to hear, because she doesn't have that much time today. So yeah, then come. Right,
Speaking
Scott?
of time. Yeah, so it's interesting, my theories on time, I'm starting to have more of them as I'm having more experience in my body, because one of the things I'm starting to get is heavy duty precognition of things that could probably happen, right? Or, it could be small or big, but that's making me really curious about time. The other thing is that, Julia Mossbridge is doing a lot of research right now on, and it's interesting what Adaam is implying is he's saying, well, if your past changes, then your future changes too, because it's on like sort of an axis of probabilities, or whatever axis it's on, right? And so I've had hypnotherapists say to me like, oh, hey, Zenka, we can just go back there, change what happened there, and then your future will actually change. So again, it's, and when we did a lot of the surveys with Exo Metaverse and LightNet, we asked people how they manifested things, and the quickest way, I mean, it was almost one or two on the list, was to imagine that it was that you were already experiencing that. So you know what I mean? So you're traveling to the future, imagining that happening, and then pulling it toward you. So there's a lot to do to really research practically in our lives about this. And I think that that's really where my heart lies, is taking all these theories. It's like, you got Adaam, who's like super scientific, I'm super philosophical, but it's also time for us to really test this stuff out. And the spoon bending is quite an interesting situation. And one of the things that's important is that everybody in the experience is believing that it's possible, right? So there's this idea that if there's, you can't have more than half of the people thinking it's impossible, because it actually, like, we affect our fields together, and it will become impossible. So yeah, we're breaking records, and we've only done 11 parties, and we're already bending forks and spoons with just our mind, without even touching them. So it's really making me scratch my head. What actually is going on here? And it's an exciting time for citizen science around the world to start asking these same questions. We think of the scientists as being the ones that have the skills or the education to research, but really we can, and I'm encouraging the world to really get down to the bottom of this. Why is Emoto's rice experience, when you say I hate you in one, it goes black, when I love you it goes white? What is that? How is Reiki possible? How can someone putting someone's hands on someone, you know what I mean? I can't even believe that we're not talking about this all the time. You know what I mean? Like, if this is true, then blank, like, wow, right?
Yeah. Thank you. What, Trish, did you have a comment about that?
Oh, I'm just really loving this a lot. I'm feeling, what I read, Mary, I read to bring it back down to the body, and I can, because I'm super embodied human, how I can try to share how I'm understanding it. What if through hundreds of years, hundreds of years ago, we already knew this. What if there was someone who was like, I'm freaked out by it, I don't want anyone else to know. And then through years of convincing other people and convincing other people and convincing other people, that now we're sitting here thinking like, oh my gosh, I'm a woman, I can only do this things, and right? Like, we've created the limitation when we truly are so vast and so magnetic and energy based. Like, they're bending spoons with their minds. Like, that shows me or tells me that the ideas, like the spark of our own animation, we'll say, our own consciousness, can literally create anything. The vastness of our imagination is the limitation in which we live in. Does this make sense? So the pleasure that you can experience is, if you can expand your imagination on what it can experience, then the pleasure, the will expand, right? So just because I live in this body doesn't mean I actually have to live in this body.
I'm bringing everybody back on because I do want to read. That was beautiful, and this is. I'm loving the show. I'm loving it. What's our show called? It's called The Awakening World, and I think what brings most of the people into watching all the shows is the common thread that we recognize this is an amazing time in human history. It's a exciting time. It's a terrifying time. It's in a number of possible scenarios. But what we're seeing tonight is people attempting to understand, and from brilliant minds. I'm really impressed with Isaac and Adaam and Zenka, helping us to understand the scientific ways of looking at so many of the things that we have explored in our consciousness. And again, how does science and consciousness come together? And one quick thing, we had Deepak Chopra on our show, and he talked about the correlation between the ancient Vedic scriptures, which defines God as Brahman with 26 principles, and the 26 principles of the unified field and how they perfectly correlate. And that we're living at a time in which our most ancient spiritual wisdom and our most modern science are basically saying the same thing. They're explaining what spiritual people call oneness and scientists call the unified field. So that does lead into a question for all of you. Where does the concept of breaking out of duality into oneness, or if you prefer, choosing love over fear, come into play with the scientific understanding of quantum consciousness?
So that is actually a big component of unity theory, is the philosophical question of choosing unconditional love, which is of the highest vibration, and fear, which is of the lowest vibration. And so in order for us to experience perceived linear time the way that we do, there must be infinite moments from which we are pulling from, which is the ultimate dream of the cosmic mind. It is the imagination from which this reality comes forth from. And so in my book, I explain that if you can imagine something, not only is it possible, it already exists. All we need to do is tap into that conscious awareness of that moment that exists within the infinite to make it real for us. And that's an answer to an earlier question about time travel or teleportation. All we need to do is realize that we are one with the universe, with our immediate reality, to know that a version of me exists across these mountains here in Sedona, and all I need to do is get my vibration to the point where I can tap into the vibrational frequency of that moment that already exists and shift my awareness from this version of me to that version of me. And so that is why consciousness is the ultimate technology. Technology itself is an imitation of our divinity or of consciousness's capabilities. And so what Trish was saying was absolutely right. It is fear that creates the limitation. The illusion of separation is the source of all suffering, lack, limitation, war, anything negative that we experience in the collective consciousness of Earth. That comes from the illusion of separation, which is all fear. So the practicality of unity theory is that it is one of the greatest scientific experiments for humanity just by reading the book. Because if we read it, we are raising our own consciousness to be more aware of the fact that I'm not just my body. I am my body and everything else too, because my body and everything else exists within the perception of my mind or my consciousness. And so once we tap into that interconnectivity, or what I call quantum interconnectivity, then we can start reforming the laws of physics. Adaam mentioned something earlier about reality being more aligned with, and correct me if I'm wrong, Adaam, more aligned with probability and chance in that way of creating reality. But I take it a step further. I say it's not probability that creates reality. It is our consciousness itself choosing to tap into those vibrational frequencies. And so at this current level, the collective consciousness of humanity believes in probability. So we start to see probabilistic outcomes. But what if, just what if, all of us started choosing unconditional love over fear at every single moment, first towards ourselves and then towards everyone else? what would happen to the collective consciousness of Earth? How many things would shift in ways that defy what we have known about chance and probability? I think that is one of the greatest experiments that we can all be a part of at this time. So.
Yeah. Well, let's bring in Zenka because I know she doesn't have that much time. And you've done experiments with love and hate. They're so matter of fact, but give us an overview of the question Scott asks. And
Yeah, so one of the things, again, I'm always interested in this idea of you're in the biggest laboratory ever built. You're in the biggest school ever built, which is life. So watch, do these thought experiments like Isaac is saying. And one of the things I've been noticing recently since New Year's Eve is that when something really good happens for me, then my friends are calling me and they're like, oh my gosh, guess what happened? This is so amazing. So I'm quite literally sure that we are completely connected as a single thing. And this is very hard. You really have to throw away your schooling and your logic and the way you think in order to understand this, because it's like, how can I be, it's like we're part of the same organism, right? We're part of a single thing, and that's so hard to understand, but it's actually what's happening. And when you are in, and back to this other question of, so we know this scientifically because there's quantum entanglement between you and anything. That's why remote viewing works. If remote viewing has been proved by the military and everyone else, so how can you be two places at once? How can you know what's going on, right? How can mothers and children feel the same thing and know each other? How can you talk to people that are dead, right? That is in your essence, right? The other thing I would say about fear and love is that is well, the point of all this school here is to figure out how to be in that unconditional love, because that's where you get the keys to the kingdom to create things. And when you feel fear or hate, it's because you personally have an incompletion in your life. They say when you hate someone else, it's because you see yourself in them, and that's the part you don't like about yourself. So we can all practice compassion right now. We're all going through an interesting couple years of the collective dark night of the soul, so it's like, be compassionate. And as Isaac always says, be compassionate with yourself and then be compassionate with others. We're all just doing the best we can.
Zenka, while you're here, and I know you're off to France for heaven's sakes, but I've pulled up your website. Tell us about the exo metaverse. There's everybody with their bent spoons, by the way. It's really, really fun. Tell us about what you're up to, because I know that you're doing great things, and I want for people to join your community. So while she's talking, by the way, the website that you're looking at, which I encourage everyone to go to right now, is exometaverse.org. EXOMETAVERSE. exometaverse.org. And tell us all about it, Zenka.
Oh, great. Yeah. So every 2 weeks, we have a survey on the top where we really map collective intelligence. So we've gotten astounding results on all sorts of topics, and they correlate to our speakers, which we do every 2 weeks. If you click on the spoon bending, which we won't do right now, but if you scroll back up, that's where you can see the Hall of Fame. You can see the pictures. You can see what we're up to. So if you scroll down, you can just see all the pictures and who's doing what and how it works. There's Dean talking about spoons as well. So if you go back to the main page, I want to point out, so there's an explainer video about LightNet, which is what we're going to be working on next. If you scroll down, Scott, this one, you guys can check out Applied Quantum Physics. That's where we talk about the software that we're building. We're building Curiosity Labs, where 100 people break through, whether it's seeing a UFO or bending a spoon or healing from, heroin addiction or doing Reiki or figuring out your, self-confidence, whatever it might be. 100 people lay down the methods and tools that they use. And then we bring groups of 8, small groups of 8 in order to do that. So we're going to be booting up the Galactic Academy first, which will include an ability to make contact using dreams or C5 or whatever you want in small groups of 8, in loving small groups. That's how we know that we can do this. So it's the many leading the many. There's no more top-down thinking. This is collective intelligence. We're building an open source platform, and we'd love to have you join us.
Fantastic, Zenka. Thank you so much for what you're doing. And I'm going to go there one more time because I want to encourage everybody, join the community. So really, really simple. It's only $4.44 every month. And there's a lot of really important things she's providing. And she's got a lot of our favorite friends on it. So you've got Adaam Apollo. Tomorrow we're going to have JJ and Desiree on the show. Paul Hynek, who I actually saw come into our Zoom room just now. So I think Paul might be watching. And if he is, I'll pop him on. Anyway, thank you very much, Zenka. Now, what are you doing in Europe? What's going on there?
Yeah, well, I'm raising money for LightNet. There's a party in the Eiffel Tower where we're going to be wheeling and dealing some NFTs, and it's blockchain week in Paris. So
fantastic. And you're lucky. Mark Danisovsky just joined, and Mark rocks. He's awesome. Go ahead, Alan.
Zenka is a great artist, and she's done these beautiful NFTs where you hold your phone with an app up to one of her paintings or drawings or graphic, and these three-dimensional image emerge from these graphic work. And it's like she created the images and she created the software that generates the 3D effect. It's brilliant. It's really brilliant. So
yeah, so you can find out about that at zenka.org. Yeah, we're doing interdimensional travel NFTs where you can go do a float tank or astral travel or past life regression. And yeah, the augmented reality NFTs are also being used to fund LightNet. So thanks for being here tonight. I will step out, but love to all of you.
All right, thank you,
Love
Zenka.
Zenka.
I'm going to read quite a few comments that have come in. So give me a moment to do that. I'm putting all of our presenters on so you can look at their beautiful faces. And then I'm just going to read some of these comments and then let you guys popcorn style respond. Justin writes, I'm going to read from Unified People first. Justin writes, remember, always do things for good. The white pure field is the field that only pure souls can go, as I was shown tonight. Ariana writes, I'm loving this. Zenka and Trish, you guys are spot on. Justin writes, it's easily understood as the refinement process goes on within us. That's interesting. Lisa writes, Isaac's double mirror theory is fascinating. Ariana writes about and asks about the works of Dolores Cannon and Pleiadian channeling and Barbara Marciniak. I don't know if that relates to anything that any of you guys are all about. People talk about how happy they are that things are happening. Finally, on last unified thing, and then I'll read from our Zoom room. Justin writes, the past, future, and present all exist in the same time, as we've just heard. So we're getting acknowledgement for that. All right, looking at some of our Zoom rumors, and I can't read all of them because there's so many, but Jeffrey, who's put in some great comments, writes, life emerges from God's source, doing the jitterbug in infinite space. The whirl, the swirl, the twirl, the twist, the ebb and flow of in and out. We are the dance of the divine as the music of the spheres. Beautiful, Jeffrey, beautiful. Connie and Andrew, who are awesome, write, yay, Zenka, totally. We came to Earth on our journey to wholeness, coming to self-love and self-acceptance, alignment with our divinity and unique purpose. We gave permission to the loving universe to show us the parts that we don't love yet, our shadow, as well as our light. And then finally, the last one I'll read for now is Dorina writes, thank you for these awesome conversations and sharings. Question to the panelists and participants. How would you link or correlate quantum consciousness with collective consciousness and co-creating consensus reality, yet each and every one of us experiencing his or her own version of reality in the dream? So there's a good question for
I
you.
just wanted to add to that because I've been thinking about since Zenka has brought up the idea that really there's only one consciousness here and we're all connected. So I wanted to particularly ask Adam, in terms of our collective consciousness, how do we qualify these thought experiments based on the expectation or the projection of a single group when we're all connected anyway? Does that make sense?
Yeah, I appreciate the easy question. The short answer to that is that you can think of a single individual as sort of a bubble reality themselves, and that encompasses their consciousness, the beliefs that that consciousness has, the ways of relating to the exterior world, to themselves. And you could say, okay, to the extent that other people or other consciousness overlaps with them, they overlap to the extent that their bubble realities are compatible. So, I can interact with most humans because we have internalized a sense of the physical body as a technology of our own consciousness, of certain physical constants of gravity and so forth. And so you could say that we can coexist. And so it could be that if what Isaac is saying is true, and I think that it is, that the physical world is a technology of consciousness, then as individual consciousness has its own signature, its own sort of technological, which is another way of saying spiritual development in this context, shared realities become either possible or impossible, or possible to an extent. Now, deep down or all the way up, of course, it's all coming from unity. But it may be a way to explain why you have consciousness that look like us, or consciousness and an embodied consciousness that look similar and sort of clustered on planets. And that could be that it's a way for that development or technology to have shared experiences, reference experiences, to be able to interact with one another in certain ways, right? Super abstract, but maybe let me give you an example. At the lab, we had a random number generator, and this was running in a room at the laboratory, okay? And we all knew about it. On the other side of that wall was a different lab, and the people in there had no idea what we were doing, and that there was a device called a random number generator in there. And their consciousness did not at all affect the random number generator inside the walls, because they weren't aware of it, right? There was no informational connection. So the devices, the random number generators, and then I think also those of the Global Consciousness Project, which is a network of these random number generators, are showing effects that the best explanation for them is that effects of people that know about them and are interested in them and have involved them in some way in their own awareness. So while there's other people, and at some level we're all kind of connected, a lot of the really interesting stuff happens when there's sort of a shared consciousness bubble realities between sort of different entities.
So entanglement is more effective than disassociation, is something like that, would you say? Or is that one way of putting it?
That's one way of putting it. You could also say, well, if alien life, ET life is so prevalent, why do very few of us actually encounter them? And it could be like a conventional materialist perspective would be, oh, well, it's because they live on other planets and they're so far away, right? Or that there's just very few of them that happen to journey here. But a consciousness perspective would say, well, you're not seeing them because you're not in the same reality bubble. You may be getting there, but you're not really capable of allowing yourself to have that shared reality yet, right? Or maybe, so like that's maybe a good example of sort of what I'm saying, and how you would reconcile this idea of sort of universal oneness and quantum consciousness, if you will, with the sort of dynamics of collective consciousness in a practical sense, bubble realities.
Yeah, Scott, what do you say?
Well, first of all, I'm really appreciating everybody. Let me go to no spotlights here for a minute. I think that it's very important for us to find that balance of who we are on the most individual level and going deep, 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 deep inside while appreciating what's going on in the world, recognizing that we play a beautiful role in the world, but that not from an ego place, not from a self centered place, but that the greatest exploration is going deep, deep, deep within. And so it's interesting, again, as all of you are talking about these incredibly large ways of seeing the world, the macro level, but yet Zenka, and I think a few have also said, keep bringing it back to ourself, keep bringing it back to ourself. And so I guess that's the next question I have, certainly for Isaac and Adaam, is where do you stand on that balance of going deep, deep, deep within while also wanting to understand what's out there?
Good. Yeah.
Isaac?
Yeah. So to touch on that, I just want to bring it back to the very simple logical fact that everything, including our body, is only experienced within our mind, within our perception or our consciousness. And so with that being said, we can go in by reflecting on our experiences, our growth, our story, our identity, all these different aspects of our reality. And when we do that and we realize that through vibrational meters, unconditional love and fear, positivity and negativity, we could say, are measured in frequency, then what we realize is there's a really practical way of applying this to our reality. We can realize that by going within and embodying the highest concepts of positivity, forgiveness, acceptance, leaving behind fear, things like that. When we do that, we create an external change because there is no separation between the internal and the external. It's all within us. Some minds have been referring to this concept as the quantum hologram of the universe that exists within all of us. And I personally feel that it exists within the 0 point of our auric field, which is in the heart center, the heart chakra, as it's referred to in spirituality. And so it's important to note that as Adaam was talking about this bubble reality idea, for me, the way that I would explain that is that is intention. With the group that was in the room that didn't understand that there was a random number generator, there was no intention to change the outcome of the results of it. So when we come together in a collective way, we become more powerful. And this is a huge concept that I'll probably be exploring in my next edition of Unity Theory, because the first version is 1.0, but that is unity consciousness. And when we enter unity consciousness, that's when we start to be in alignment with the rest of the universe. I actually feel like I'm getting a download right now about the way that I can explain this, is that in cymatics, when you are coherent, or when a frequency is coherent and it is resonant, it creates a beautiful geometric pattern. But if it's not resonant, if it's dissonant, it creates chaos, it creates asymmetry, the lack of symmetry. And so when we come together in a collective way, knowing that we are all a fragment of the whole, which is the ocean in a drop, knowing that we have access to all of that power, we can come together, sort of connect our energies, and set the intention to create a higher outcome that is in the benefit of all. And in reference to the idea of the difference between us and ETs, from my personal understanding and my experience, these beings are not just extraterrestrial, they're extra-dimensional, meaning they exist in higher dimensional octaves or frequencies. And the reason I believe that they don't interact with us more is because in order to be in those realms, they must have a higher consciousness. And because consciousness is part of the whole dance with frequency, since everything is vibration, frequency, and energy. And for us to interact with them, we have to be on the vibrational level where we want them here. If we don't want them here, they're not going to violate our free will against our free will and come down en masse and do whatever they want and say, oh, we're going to heal you, we're going to help you. They don't know. That's not what they're going to do, because they're at that higher level of awareness. They already know that we are all one. And go ahead, Alan.
No, I'm saying it's like the room, the people next door, the pear lab who don't have anything, who don't know anything that's going on, don't influence the experiment. The people who are so closed-minded to the possibilities of ETs are actually creating the limited view of reality. So this is why the conversation that we've had in Awakening World, Saturday Night Live, is about expanding the understanding of these bigger realities so we can welcome them in. Essentially, we are the quantum experiment. This is what I got from what Adam said, and Trisha's great enthusiasm is that everything we do, and we know this, affects reality. Everything. If you're kind to a person on the street, that kindness emanates out, and that person is kind, and it's this whole quantum effect. And so we are the experiment. We, like Isaac said, we are the quantum gift is the word that comes to me. We are it, Scott, and we are in this experimental field playing out the mechanisms of these scientific patterns that we're just starting to understand. So.
That resonates deeply with me, Alan, honestly. I actually explored this idea in my book when I explained that no scientist could ever have a controlled experiment, because the scientist is always part of the experiment, and the idea of a control is being separate from it. So it's kind of a cosmic joke right there, isn't it?
Well, Adam's smiling. I want to hear what Adam has to say, because he's thinking something.
As time has gone on, I've come to believe that it's all inside of us. Why do we live in a world that has, why are each of us attracted to this idea of uniting science and spirituality, of integrating dualities, right? Well, it's because the work to do is to integrate the dualities in our own heart. I mean, why else are we so drawn to this weird subject of, trying? And it's weird and it's important, and but it follows us around our lives, and it won't stop. And I think it's because it's a reflection of a deeper process that's taking place within us, and it's also an invitation for each of us to see through what this really is, and go inside and find the truth that we would love the world to wake up to, and wake up to it even more ourselves. Scott and Alan, you guys have been doing this for a long time, longer than I've been alive.
It's
and
true.
Which is amazing, by the way. And I'm judging by the background painting and image, I think that in all of the work that you guys have done and the guests that you've interviewed, you've come to believe precisely the same thing. Yeah. And that's what's really made the difference for you.
Thank you.
Yeah, I want to say that I think I did for many years I was producing television shows around UFO stuff. I'm going to bring Isaac on too, and also bring on Trish. And it was really a wonderful time. I was a segment producer for several nationally broadcast television shows, and for 7 years I produced over 100 nationally broadcast, mostly UFO, some near-death experience stuff. And I interviewed 8 former astronauts, 30 former military people, a lot of people over that 7-year period. And what I came away from it with is that it is, I call it a dream world, because everybody's experience is clearly real for them. I mean, every now and then we get somebody that was making shit up, but most of the time people were having very real experiences. But there were most people's cosmic experiences, alien abduction experiences, were happening in their own personal reality. Now, a skeptic could say, well, they're having a psychotic break, or they're projecting, what Uncle Fred did to them onto the evil aliens, which is an interesting concept. But then every now and then there's an event that takes place in group consensus reality. The crash at Roswell was significant because it really happened in group consensus reality. And this is actually leading me to a question for all of you. At what point or in what ways does group consensus reality interact with our personalized reality? And how does group consensus reality evolve towards singularity or oneness consciousness?
Yeah, Trish, yes.
I have so many thoughts on this. Okay, I'm gonna rant, and I've been taking notes. So one thing that I heard, which I really love, is human beings are embodied consciousness, and I was like, ooh, that got me all going. Thanks for that, Adam. So I'm going to tie it all into the question that you asked before, and how I'm understanding this conversation, because again, I can only rationalize what my limited brain can comprehend in the moment. So let's talk about collective consciousness and the difference, how I see the differences between collective consciousness, consensus reality, and quantum consciousness. And so how I see in this moment collective consciousness is that it's based in human constructs, the human constructs of, like, in the family. So you have your family unit that teaches you how to speak, right? Who taught you how to speak? Probably your parents or whatever. So that teaches you how to think, right? So in whatever reality they're in, that's the initial filter in which you're filtering the world. So then you've got the community vocabulary and their systems and ways of behavior. Then you've got society, so whatever place you live in. And then you've got that cultural piece. So as an American, as a person who's grew up in the United States as a female, socialized as female, that I have certain behaviors, Scott. Like I was taught to be this way as a white person. So I'm trained to think, move, and behave in this certain way. Now, that's just one layer of it. I've created my personality, like as a young person, without even the understanding or consciousness of being able to understand how I'm creating my personality based on the people around me, my identity, and how I want to belong, which is the belongingness to your social group. And the ego is how I've created to get my needs met, right? So this is just collective consciousness. This is how I've participated in this particular group. Now, if we pull back a little bit to consensus reality, as consensus reality is how we conspire with others' realities and with the creation or the perpetuation of, let's say, our ancestral beliefs and some version of how we've evolved that. So how we choose to act based on the belief systems that we partake in. So red, this color, for people who can see this color, is what we've consensusly in our reality have consensusly decided. We've conspired all together that this is red, and this is a reality entanglement, right? So how we start to kind of dissolve this piece is to start acknowledging that there's a lot of human constructs that have kept us in this belief system, right? So this is why I'm doing the decolonization work. Slightly more activisty based on my love of humans and how I want them to be loved, right? How I want them to be able to love themselves. And then there's quantum consciousness, which is the actual embodied feeling and being, the spark of life, the animation, the remembering, we'll call it remembering, since some of us, just as a as like a connection point. Remembering oneness, what it feels like to not have the social constructs that make you insecure. Because all of those insecurities and all of the fear stuff, that's all man-made. Like none of those exist. Things that you have about your body and your age and the skin, like that's all stuff that's not real, right? That's what keeps you from the collective oneness. That's what keeps you from feeling it, from being it. So that's my answer, Scott, is that you start to have these conversations. You start to read things that are maybe outside of your general ability to conceptualize. You start looking at the beliefs that you have or the fears that you have, or even the general running thoughts that you have, and play with the thought experiments.
You know, I just want to respond because what you said combined with what Scott says makes me think we have our individual experiences, abduction, whatever, that's ours. And then we have the social awareness that what we're allowed to think. But that social awareness is also a psychic kind of radar about the people around us and their thought form realities influencing us and what we're allowed to think. So there's this level of non-local mind that hasn't been recognized within the social awareness, the social culture, that I think if we did, we would realize how much more connected we are, and those the matrix that has locked us into limited thinking could start to unravel as we realize that we can actually also affect the social conscious. Instead of being subjected to it, we can push it out and influence it.
That's why we're creating new language around it. That's why we're defining things differently. That's why we're dissolving certain ideas, right? This is how we do it, is that we widen our capacity. We educate ourselves.
I think this fits
and we make it
unity, right, Isaac?
Absolutely. So I was just waiting for my chance to get in here. And thank you, Trish, for being so amazing and sharing your perspective. And in a very playful way, as we're talking about consensus reality and the collective consciousness, the meme from the TV show The Office keeps popping into my head where they're like, with this picture and this picture, which one is it? And then she's like, they're the same picture. And so for me, it's the same thing. Like, it is the collective consciousness that affects our consciousness when we believe that we are a victim of our reality, or reality is just happening to us. And when we start to acknowledge and take back the authority of our existence, of our story, and the authority meaning literally from the root word author, we can consciously create reality. And what I've found, which is extremely phenomenal and incredibly empowering, is when we take this authority back through responsibility, through ownership of what we have created, then we can truly create the best reality for ourselves. And in every situation this has shown up in my experience, I have come to realize that one of the 12 universal laws, which are extremely incredible spiritual teachings, I highly recommend looking them up to anybody watching this. There is the law of perpetual transmutation of energy. And part of that law of the universe is that higher vibrational frequencies are innately more powerful than lower vibrational ones. And so I'd like to share a really powerful story from my own experience in which this happened. So shortly after my awakening, I tried to explain my theories to my close family members that I have trusted my entire life, and they have trusted me with pretty much everything. And they couldn't understand what I was trying to explain to them, even though for me it was very clear. And so while I was driving in Chicago, one of my family members called the police on me because they thought that I was having a psychological malfunction or meltdown or something. And I was immediately surrounded by a dozen police vehicles, literally, including a SWAT van. And they immediately swarmed me with 360 degrees of force, and they started yelling at me saying, "You better get out of the vehicle or we're gonna open fire." I immediately raised my hands and I explained, "I have no idea what's going on. I'm an innocent man. You're gonna be killing an innocent man." They said, get out or we will have to use force. And I explained, I was in the service in the Army National Guard for almost 7 years. We wouldn't even treat insurgents overseas this way. And amidst the commotion with weapons aimed at me, safety's off, the officers talking about vectors of fire, one of the officers at my driver's side window looked in and said, "You better listen to me." And in that moment, I felt this surge of energy, of adamance, of fearlessness. And I said, "No, you listen to me." And every single officer simultaneously lowered their weapons and took a step back and looked at me like, "Who the F are you?" And immediately, everything shifted. They all put their weapons away, and then they sent over a sergeant to work with me one-on-one that was more of a father figure type energy. And then I told him how we were going to proceed. And that proved to me that nobody, absolutely nobody, can out-create or veto your reality or force you to be a victim against your will. The only things that can allow for that to happen is a specific lesson that we are meant to learn in our embodiment, in our experience, or fear. With fear being 99.999% of the equation for that, for me. And so when we choose anything above fear, which is courage, and anything of a higher vibrational content per our normal frequency meters, we cannot be overwritten. So that is why unity theory is extremely important to bring to the people, because the more that we integrate this knowledge and believe it, the more we put that energy out to the collective. And we don't need to all believe it. We just need a critical mass, a small percentage of the entire population. And then because of the higher vibrational nature, it will create a tsunami wave that transforms this entire world so that we can create a civilization, I think a type 1 civilization, in which every single person is accounted for and has clean water, healthy food, and shelter over their heads.
I want to acknowledge your Obi-Wan Kenobi moment. These are not the people you're looking for. Right? I mean, you definitely, and it's a powerful story. I want to know, and obviously just as briefly as you can, how did you get there into your consciousness that with all the reasons to be afraid, you were able to do that? And how much of that is preparation prior to that event, and how much of it is a choice made in the moment of the event?
Well, as we've talked about in this show so far, everything happens in the present moment. So for me, there was no such premeditation for what occurred. For me, it was the fact that I did create that moment. I created that scary moment, and I own that 100%. I was going through this huge energetic purge of fear because at that moment in my story, I had not yet completely made the entire connection that unconditional love would supersede and overcome fear at every opportunity. And because of the information that I had stumbled across in the generation of my theories, I realized, I mean, in the history of humanity, they have murdered people for this information. And so I was playing that program in my consciousness. And that put me in that situation. But who I really am, for me to have that knowledge and for it to not get out to the people, I couldn't let that happen. And so that is why in that moment, it didn't matter what they said to me, how many weapons they had pointed at me. I would adamantly refuse a million times, a billion times. I don't know. Per my theories, I probably did it an infinite amount of times, but that's just who I am. And when we realize that we have that potential, then what happened for me in that moment can happen for any one of you, because at the highest level, you are all the same universe experiencing itself. You are all me. So I think that's really important to integrate into our personal reality.
I definitely want to hear from Adaam, but before we do that, since the camera's on you, do you want to still show that video snippet?
Yeah, that would be great.
So tell us what we're about to see.
So this is my promotional video for Unity Theory. It is both a video explaining a little bit about my story and how I came across these philosophical and scientific understandings. And it is also a call to action, knowing that whoever shares this video, whoever reads Unity Theory, we're all ending the illusion of separation every time we do it. That energy goes out to the collective consciousness of humanity. And as I just said, it's more powerful than fear. So I really hope you all enjoy it and share it if it resonates.
Great. It's about 3 minutes we're going to see. So kick back and enjoy this.
Everybody for watching.
Oh my God, that was gorgeous. What a fucking beautiful video. I love that video. I absolutely loved it. I hadn't seen it before, so thank you. I'm going to bring on Trish for a moment, and then of course I want to hear from Adam. But Trish.
Oh, she's speechless. Oh God. Right?
Well,
No, that was lovely.
Well, since she's speechless, let's go to your website for a moment. Whoop, there, that's still the video. Let's go to your website. How do people get your book? How do people find out more about you?
Yeah, so my moniker is the Crimson Eagle. That's my Instagram handle and all that jazz. So thecrimsoneagle.com, very simple, easy to remember. It's just a little bit about me. It's the promotional video, a bio, and then down towards the probably second third of the website is a little presentation of my book, Unity Theory, and then right below that is a download button. And I'm giving this information out to humanity out of love, and all I'm taking is love donations. And if somebody can't, afford to give me a love donation, that's totally fine. Whatever resonates with you. I'm not here to force this information upon anybody. I'm just offering it so that we all have the opportunity to build that brighter world together. So.
Well, that's all Twinkle Isaac. Isaac, I'm very impressed.
Yes, and thank you, Scott. This is Isaac's coming out party. He's now a force in the world to make change. So thanks for being here, Isaac.
Wanda asked me to express how I really feel about the video, so I apologize if I wasn't enthusiastic enough. But I'm
God, you never curse, and you said the F word, which is my favorite word.
oh, it was a beautiful video.
Thank you.
All right. Well, we have this other amazing presenter who I've also been equally impressed with. Adam, this is your time to kind of wrap us up and share any final thoughts about tonight's topic. And also, if there's anything, I only have a Twitter for you. Is that the best way for people to reach you, or is there another website that I should be pulling up?
Yeah, Twitter will do.
Okay.
And Adam, I wanted you also to speak about the experiment you're doing now about electrons that you talked to us briefly about, because that is really fascinating and cutting edge. So wrap it all up and add some more of what's coming out of your genius.
Well, I'm excited to understand more about the nature of what Isaac is proposing. It's not just a theory of reality, but it seems to be part also instruction book on how to awaken to your present state and how your present state has some influence on your life situation. If I'm understanding the video correctly.
Absolutely, Adam.
And I think this is maybe something that we've all agreed upon in the course of our conversation. I know certainly Trish and Scott and everyone has mentioned it deliberately. I will say that it's actually in my career as an entrepreneur been something that made all the difference for me. A couple of years ago, somebody asked me, as they often do, "Oh, Adam, how are you?" I said, "Oh, I'm busy." And I realized that I had been saying, "I'm busy, I'm busy, I'm busy, I'm busy," again and again and again and again for like 20 years. And I realized that if I'm saying this about myself, then I'm probably telling myself to create a state, or if you were like a reality situation, that is that of a busy person. And that's not what I wanted. I didn't want to be busy. I didn't want to wear being preoccupied as a sort of some sort of badge of honor or something like that. What I wanted was success in my companies. So then I thought, okay, well, instead of being busy, what I want is success in my companies. And then I caught myself again. I realized that I had told myself to be in a state of wanting success with my companies. And I was like, this is very slippery, but it's an important thing. So I began to meditate. And I had found through a reference, a meditation instructor who helped me separate my mind from pure sensing, from pure awareness. And in that state, I was able to spend at least a couple of minutes a day, not in a state of being busy, not in a state of wanting, but simply paying attention to the baseline of my own experience. And rather than trying to change it, just to see it as it was. And in seeing it how it was, I was able to find almost the places in my body, to perceive the places in my body that seemed to be giving life to my personality traits, and then how those personality traits connected to my current circumstances. And by simply paying attention to them, a very interesting thing started to happen. They started to blossom, sort of to change, and to where there was tension, there became a spacefulness, a spaciousness, I guess. And it felt physically like I had greater levity. And it was easier for me to maintain a state of feeling like the business activities that I'm doing were easy, and that success was coming naturally. That there was really no need for me to feel stressed or in a state of wanting or not being there. And as soon as I made that shift, and I'm talking like within days of this really kicking off, so many wonderful synchronicities happened. I was able to close a very large funding round. Multiple large strategic partners showed themselves. And you know, I'm sitting in my office now with over 100 employees, and this is what we're all discussing is something that we can all absolutely continue to embody in our lives, and it will make a fantastic difference on whatever we want it to make a difference on, be it our health or our relationships or our careers. It's right there. So anyway, personal anecdote. Take the material with you and take it into your lives. I think that's how we make a difference.
And what are you working on now? You just had something you said earlier that was very interesting.
So I have a couple of partners. We've got something like a venture studio for technologies that are based on unconventional science, meaning the traditional VC world isn't going to invest in unconventional new paradigm tech. They don't understand it. And so they're not going to get behind it. But we understand it. And so long story short, we've researched and developed a number of cutting edge technologies and grown them into large businesses. One of them that I'm pretty excited about is a company called Luminos. And Luminos is a wearable patch that's like a pain patch. You can think of it as like if you have back pain or shoulder pain, you can put it on your body, and the patch helps reduce the inflammation. Now, what's important about that, and topical for this conversation, is that it's based on kind of an alternative picture of quantum mechanics. Your mainstream quantum mechanics would view an electron, like a quantum particle, as sort of a dumb billiard ball particle. Every electron is the same, whether it's from this material or that material or whatever. Our perspective is a little bit different. It's not unique to us, by the way. There's many people that have come to think this way. And that's that the electron contains information. It's another way of saying it is a boundary condition on the Planck field. But think of it as little school buses that contain information. And so an electron from Tylenol is different than an electron from ginger, is different than an electron from water, and so forth. So essentially what Luminos technology is able to do is capture the electrons from different substances that are known to cause reduction in inflammation, imprint that into the capacitive patch, which holds these electrons. And then when you apply it to your body, your body has a library of that quantum information from which it can pull to reduce that inflammation, critically without there being any side effects because there's no chemistry. There's literally no drugs in it. It's just electrons. And we've done a couple of clinical trials now that are all tremendously successful and have a nicely growing business as well, wherein the patch is really helping people stop the inflammation that causes the pain in their bodies. If you're interested, just Google Luminas, Luminas, and try it out.
But you're rewriting the laws of science as we know it and health. This is brilliant. I think it works. I think you're onto something big.
Yeah, I mean, well, we're not the only people that are thinking this way. Of course, there's the whole world of complementary and alternative medicine, energy healing. There's got to be something like information transfer for these things to exist. Even the conventional perspective of swallowing an aspirin and there being some sort of receptor in the cell, and the aspirin molecule triggers that receptor. Okay, but if nothing ever really touches, but everything just comes really close, then you still have to have some sort of, I mean, hypothetically, there's still some information transfer from electrons, right? So even in the standard biological picture of these things, there's plenty of room for quantum effects. I think we're just beginning to awaken to them though.
I think Walter Russell was onto something like this in his theories of weak and strong electrons. But yeah, I think this is what we've heard here tonight, Scott, is the revolution in thought and thinking as it combines to empowering us as human beings. That's what I feel we have tonight.
I'm kind of humbled, to be honest. Both Adam and Isaac, it's my first time meeting both of you. And usually most of the people that are guests on the show, I kind of booked a note, but I was just like, turned it over to Alan, who turned it over to Zenka, and you guys have really blown me away. And it gives tremendous hope. I mean, I'm an optimistic guy anyway, but it's beautiful to see both of you and Trish, who do represent, God bless, I'm guessing you're millennials. God bless the millennials to come up with the solutions to the problems that Alan and I and our generation
created, right?
created.
Oh, you can't take it all on.
No.
It was happening long before you.
Yeah, it was. It goes back a ways.
Solution, yes.
Okay, so I do want to do my hosting duties. I want to remind everybody that Alan Steinfeld has a fantastic YouTube channel. And I'm going to, of course, go to that, Alan. Tell us all about New Realities.
Well, New Realities exemplifies what we saw tonight. I seek out people with new ideas and new possibilities and give them a showcase because reality isn't what it used to be. So what we're seeing here is some of my playlists. And this is really what's excites me. For the last 25 years, I've been interviewing people like Joe Dispenza before anyone heard of him, and Bruce Lipton. I sought him out and said, Bruce, you're doing something great, before it was published, because I would hear about things in alternative papers. And I also have this interview with David Hawkins, which is probably one of the few. What's his name? Dan Winter, another genius, and our good friend Greg Braden, but lots of interesting people that no one's heard of. Like Adaam, just met him in Sedona. I knew he was right for the show when we were formulating it, and then Zenka brought in Adaam, but Isaac, Adaam, and everyone's here. We're building a new field. That's what New Realities is about. It's about how do we step out of the old matrix and contemplate a different world. And we are at the edge of this. We're standing at the edge of a wave, all of us here. This is the quantum wave. We're not looking back from where we came. We're hacking our way through this forest of the future that has no trail, and we are making that path. I know it's all been done, Isaac, but we are making a new path into reality. So it's very exciting. Thanks for the opportunity, Scott. And tomorrow night, we're picking up this theme of quantum.
Tell us who we've got tomorrow.
Well, tomorrow's going to be a little more focused on astronomy, theory, consciousness. We have Paul Hynek, who, of course, is the son of J. Allen Hynek, who qualified the close encounter experience. And Paul has his own ideas about the nature of reality. We have my good friends JJ and Desiree Hurtak, who are probably the best cosmologists I've met in integrating spirituality, science, ancient civilization. So they have a whole school called the Academy of Future Science. They're going to be talking about Stanley Krippner, who is the godfather of anomalous paranormal phenomena, is going to be a special guest on the pre-show. He's going to be talking with JJ Hurtak and Stanley Krippner, go back a long way. And then to kind of wrap it all up on another level is my friend who's an astrologer, Jenna Ba, who's going to look at the Webb telescope, which is really an advancement of science and our ability of our eyes to look into space, looking at the astrology behind that and Einstein's theories. And so it kind of connects in here, and she's mixing this all up with astrology somehow. I can't wait to see that. So we have that. Am I forget? Oh, and Carolyn Corey. Yes, Carolyn Corey is going to be on the show, showcasing the trailer for our new film called A Tear in the Sky, which is all about how she wanted to track UAPs, UFOs, with technology, and she's discovered some remarkable things. So Carolyn's another genius that's creating a whole new field of awakening. So I'm very excited about tomorrow's show, and we'll pick up where we left off tonight. So thanks.
But wait, there's more.
Oh yeah.
On Saturday nights, we also have music, and we have amazing musicians tomorrow. Johanna Beekman and Cornflower. And Cornflower is this super amazing psychedelic looping artist. We all love Cornflower. And then also want to let people know about Sunday. You know, every weekend we take a topic and we explore it on Friday night, Saturday night, and Sunday morning. So on Sunday, go ahead and tell us who we've got on Sunday, Alan.
So we've laid the groundwork tonight about what is quantum field. Tomorrow we'll look at the practical applications in science. And on Sunday, we have some of my favorite people from Massachusetts who's looking about those technologies in transformation, in interpersonal transformation, bringing in the spirit. These are people who've done the hard work of looking at themselves and realizing what does it take to really create transformation in our lives. Some of them come out of the recovery world and they are warriors of light because they've been, some of them, through the darkest night of the soul and have come back and emerged into light. You're going to love Kristen and Steve and Jojo. These are people who are making a difference in other people's lives, and I've just met them the past year, but I really like them, and I wanted to give them their own little forum to talk about quantum transformation and their own process, which each of them have a fantastic story. So thanks for the opportunity, Scott, for bringing out people I feel who are making a difference in other people's lives. So
Yeah. Well, thank you. Thank you. You've done an amazing job, Alan, of putting this all together.
yeah.
So I'm going to go to Trish. Trish, do you have any final thoughts you want to share?
Oh, I just want to thank Alan for you. I love sharing time with you. Thank you so much. And I want to say thank you to Isaac and Adaam, and wow, and shout out to Zenka too. We love when she comes on as well.
Zinka is so, the enthusiasm and energy behind Zinka is no wonder people can bend spoons in her presence. She emanates it.
So I just want to thank all of you for showing up and teaching us how to be in love.
Oh, thank you for being so sweet. Maybe we'll meet one day, but you're always right there, Trish. Every time I tune into you and Scott, you are right there with your, like that. Yeah, right there.
Yeah, I got it. You're getting all of me all the time. We share atoms, don't you know?
That's right.
Well, we're sharing an atom.
According to Deepak Chopra, we will share approximately 80,000 molecules with every being who ever lived. So in your lifetime, you'll have Hitler's molecules and Jesus's molecules and Cleopatra's and the woman washing clothes up in the Yangtze River right now.
But they
So,
could be a different electron, right, Adam? They could be.
Quite possible.
all right. By the way, Adam, you'll appreciate Trish lives in a school bus. It's a beautiful renovated school bus. And so when you talked about electrons are like school buses, I said, Trish, you're living in a big electron.
It's true.
Been a lot of fun, Scott, and so educational. It's like I learned a lot that I didn't expect to. So
No, tonight was amazing. It was an amazing night. So, all right. Thank you very much, Alan, Trish, Adam, Isaac. Great to meet you guys.
everyone watching,
Deeply grateful.
And everybody watching, please. In fact, I'll go to gallery view. Let's take a look at all of our friends on gallery view. So turn on your cameras. Don't be shy. I know we're all wearing pajama bottoms. It's okay. It's
or
Zoom.
nothing.
or nothing, right?
There's some of us who are wearing pajama bottoms. That's what I heard.
Wait, you guys are wearing pants?
Yeah, and everyone watching online too, their consciousness is also adding to the value of this conversation. There has to
That's
be.
right. That's right. So it's good to look at all these beautiful souls. And likewise, everybody watching on Unify, everybody watching the replay. The majority of people who are going to watch this are going to actually watch the replay. So whether you're watching live, the replay, share it with your friends. This is really important information. I want the world to know about Adam and Isaac and New Realities TV. So
Well, on my chat, on the New Realities chat, it says, Tersina says, powerful young people here. Thank you for carrying the torch.
absolutely.
Kathy
Absolutely.
Robertson says, awesome, Isaac. I also love your SWAT story. I suddenly felt if I needed to, I could also do that.
We all
Great.
can.
Yeah. So
All right, so I'm going to bring everybody on one last moment. Actually, we'll just go to gallery review. We'll finish the gallery review. Thank you, everybody, for being with us. We'll see you tomorrow night. Remember, register for the Zoom. You'll come on in at 5:30. Join us tomorrow at 5:30, the early show for Stanley Krippner and a powerful interview with Stanley, JJ, and Desiree Hertalk. Take care, everybody. See you
thank
soon.
you for awakening the world, Scott.